What's up, guys? Alright, so for a while now, I've been kind of curious about taking object tracking data from video feeds and converting that into usable data for animatronics. So basically, animatronics that can kind of like watch you as you walk around and follow you, all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm going to play around with that today. For this, I'm going to be using this dude. This is something I 3D printed a couple years ago. It's an animatronic eye mechanism designed by Will Cogley. It has, hard to do this one-handed, but like it has left and right eye movements, up and down eye movements. I can't really actuate that with one hand right now. And then it has the eyelids are also controlled by servos. I'm not going to be diving too deep into this mechanism. If you're interested in this specific thing, I'm going to link to his video in the description where you can get all the information about this. But I 3D printed this a couple years ago, and I figured this would be perfect for this project so we can link the servos for the eyes into the program and have them like walk around and look. And yeah, should be pretty fun. I think I'm going to use TouchDesigner for this. There's other ways to do this. There's like a million ways to do this, but TouchDesigner, I've been playing around with that software a lot lately, and it seems like a pretty good solution for getting data between the video and out to this. It seems like a good conduit for that. So yeah, I'll jump into that. First things first, I need to do with this is I need to make sure all these servos still work, and I need to get their ranges and all of that kind of stuff. So I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Alright, so first things first, this little guy is a Maestro controller made by Pololu. And this is probably one of my favorite servo controllers. It's super easy. You basically hook all the servos up to these banks right here, and then the software allows you to like actuate the servos using different sliders in the software. This isn't what I'm going to use for the final control of the eyes, but hooking this up is a really quick way that I can test my servos, get all the ranges of left to right movement. And I say that because if you think about the webcam feed and the eyes, there's like a cone of vision, right? And most of the time, servos are able to move way further in either direction than you really need out of the eyes. For example, like, let's say I'm looking at you, right? Like, my range is really from like here to here, but like I can look all the way over there, but like that's not gonna show up on the webcam feed. So there's like a certain amount of range that I need to get, and I'll be able to determine that pretty easily once I get all of the servos hooked up to this. I'll explain a little bit better as we get into this. Alright, so quick little side tangent. I forgot that my Maestro does not provide voltage to the servos from USB. So I don't have any of my stuff with me. Normally I'd have like 5 volt and 12 volt power supplies, but I don't. But if you take a phone charger and you strip the wires, most phone chargers provide 5 volts natively. So I'm taking an old USB cable and I'm stripping it. Oh man, this USB cable sucks. It's like bound in like leather or something. Come on. Get out of there. Get out of there. Anyways, once I have this, I'll be able to power my servos off of the 5 volts from this cord. But yeah, quick tip: if you ever need 5 volts easily, cut up a phone charger and wires in there, black and red, those are your positive and negative, and then double check on your phone charger. Can't really read it, but it'll show your output. Output 5 volts, 1 amp, which should be more than enough to power the servos. Alright, so as you can see here, I've got my cord. It's split apart. It's going into jumper wires. That goes into my breadboard of the positive and negative rails, and then coming off my positive and negative rails, it's going into my master controller. The negative is the far left side, the positive is the middle, and then the far right side is the signal. And then I've got my servo attached to pin 0, which is this servo right here. And then in my Mastro software, you can see that I've got servo 0 enabled, and then I can use this slider bar to move that around. Alright, so if I connect the rest of these really quick. So this is the up-down movement. I'm going to connect this to pin 1. And then if I enable servo 1, okay, my ranges are way off in this software, so I'm going to have to do some things. Because you can see my target ranges and all that kind of stuff. If I go to channel settings, I can adjust all of my ranges. So I'm going to do that and finish hooking the servos up, and I'll be right back. Alright, so now all of my servos are connected, and they're all ranged correctly. And now I can go around in my software test each individual servo. So I can make it look down and up, left and right, etc., etc. So the cool thing about this software is if you're trying to actually animate with it, you can go into sequence and you can basically move all of your sliders exactly where you want them to be, and then click that as save frame, and then you can move the sliders again and then save frame, etc., etc. And then when you play it back, it'll move all the sliders to where it needs to go. But this isn't how we're going to control the servos in the project. This was just so I could test that all the servos were still working, all the ranges are working, etc., etc., etc. Alright, so update. So I've got this Sunfounder PCA 9685 16-channel servo driver, which is what we're going to be using for the servos. Servos are all plugged into the channels. I've got my phone charger cord from earlier plugged into the terminal block here. Then I've got these wires going from like 5 volts and ground, and then SCL and SDA into my ground 5 volts, and then terminals A4 and A5 for the SDA and SCL. And then in my Arduino Art IDE, I installed the what is it? It's called the the Adafruit PWM servo driver library, and I opened up the test file. So this basically is an example test file that will test the servos. So once I plug this into my computer here, this all powers up, and basically it goes through a test of all the servos. It starts with servo channel 0 and works its way up through all the rest of the servo channels, slowly testing things one by one. So this is working, the servos are working, the Arduino is working. So everything's working how we need it to. So this is the basics of our setup. So now we can get into the actual coding and getting this to do what we need it to do. Alright, so we're currently in TouchDesigner. I've spent the last several hours building this TouchDesigner network, and I'll kind of show you how things work. So first things first, my webcam is being fed into MediaPipe. MediaPipe's a really cool plugin for tracking all sorts of things in video. If I turn show overlays on here, I'm using facial detector. Detect faces simple is what it's called here, to get values from my face that I'm using for the rest of the network. But I can do all sorts of things like detect facial landmarks, detect hands if I was doing a project that needed hand detection, etc., etc. I'm not going to dive too deep into this. I'll link to another video that explains MediaPipe and how all of that works separately, but all you really need to know is I'm using face detector here, and if you look at this null here, what face detector is doing is it's providing all sorts of XY values for different things like left eye, right eye, nose tip, mouth, etc., etc. And for this project, I'm using my nose tip values because it's a good central location on my face for the video to be watching. And then down here, none of this was really necessary, but basically what I was doing was I was using my XY values to drive this circle top, so I could relay it over my face and double check that everything was tracking correctly and all that. And then I learned through doing this that my Y values are going to be inverted. Not sure why, but it's just how it works. So once I was done experimenting with that, we'll go back to my original select of nose tip values out here. Those go into separate selects for X and Y, and then those go into math chops. And the math chops are set to range them from 10 to 150 for my X, and then 150 to 10 for my Y. And those are servo angle values, basically. Then I merge those back together, and then those go into a select chop. I didn't need to use a select chop here. It was kind of antiquated from another couple of things that I was doing, but this does rename them to just X and Y, which is a little bit easier to deal with, which is nice. And then from there, these values are being read by this chop execute data. And the timer here is to cook the chop execute dat. And basically what it does is it takes my XY values and converts them into serial data and sends that serial data into my serial chop. I had to use this debug to make sure that everything was getting read out correctly. And then my serial data chop sends that out to my COM6, which is my Arduino. And then in Arduino here, the Arduino is coded to take those values and drive the servos with those values. That's basically how this whole network works. Not too complicated. In the math chops here, I'll probably have to adjust these ranges later. Um, like I was talking about earlier in the video, with basically like the edges of the camera might not line up to where, like, as the eyes are moving back and forth, that's how I get the right ranges from the servos. Like if I'm moving all the way to like the left here, the eyes might be looking past me. But by ranging them differently, I can get the eyes to track me as they move. Um, so yeah, let me show you what this all looks like outside of my computer with the actual eyes. Alright, so I've got all this built on my computer. I've got the eyes right here. And then as I move left and right, and then up, and then down, the eyes move around respectively. You'll probably notice that the eyes are glitching out a lot. And basically what's happening there is that's what's happening when I lose tracking. So once I go out of frame, the eyes just kind of freak out and don't know what to do. But they are being driven. Let's see if I can get them both in frame at the same time. Well, I guess I can just pick this up. And if I just scroll in here, so you can see, I move one side, I move the other, I move down, I move up, etc., etc., and that's how the eyes are being driven. Alright, so with what I was talking about earlier with my right-left values, if I go into my math chops here, the range 10 to 150, I'm going to change this a little bit. So maybe I'll make this 30 to 150. Let's see. So now if I move all the way to the left, a little bit less. Still more than I want it to be. So let's say 50 to 150. Yeah. So now my maximum is clamped a little bit better. And then if it wasn't working on the other one, I could change the upper value or the lower value. And I'm only doing this to X because my Y tracking is working pretty good. But if it wasn't, I could change that value as well. So that's how I fix that. The webcam is not in line with the eyes anymore, so you can't see it directly, but it is tracking my face pretty well now. Alright, so another time jump. So what I'm doing right now, I'm working on the eyelids. And what I did for that was I have an Arduino script now that basically it allows me in the serial monitor to type in the channel values. So 2, let's go 60. 2, 60. And that'll change channel 2 to 60. And basically what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to get a baseline for whether my eyelids are open and closed and where those servos need to be. So then in my final code, I can have it so that my eyelids have like an open state and a closed state, and I can have them blink every once in a while. But I need to find the exact degrees that the servos need to be in both their open and closed state for me to do that. So I think servo 2 it being 60 is correct. Now if I remember correctly, servo 3 is the other bottom eyelid. So if I 3, 60, is that going to work? Yeah, so that is going to be the closed states for my bottom eyelids. That's 4, 60. Let's see what that one does. That's more open. So 4, 100. Okay. 4, 150. Okay. So it's 4, and if I do 5, 150. 4 and 5. Ooh, no, that's the opposite. So 5, 10. Okay, that's a little bit more than the other one. 5, 30. 5, 30. 5, 60. Okay, so they're about even. So I'm going to do that, get my open and closed states, and then I'll get back to the rest of the video. Alright, so a little bit of time has been working on my Arduino code, and now every so often the eyelids will close and open again like it's blinking. So that's kind of cool. The eyelids are doing something. Last thing I need to figure out here is I need to do something about why the eyes just glitch out as soon as they lose tracking. I think what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to add a switch somewhere in my TouchDesigner project. I'm not sure exactly where yet. I need to add a switch so that it basically just like turns off the servo movement as soon as it's not detecting something, just locks it in place. So yeah, let's work on that. Alright, so I got everything updated here. When I move right, it tracks me. When I move left, it tracks me pretty smoothly. Occasionally, it's programmed to blink. And then the other thing that it does is if it loses track of my face, I'm just going to block my face here. If it loses track of my face, it'll automatically close the eyes until it gets motion tracking again. And the way that all of that is happening is I took another select chop off of my data, and I just took a random value, this is mouth, and I put that through a logic chop. And what it's doing is when my face is detected, the logic is 1, and when it's not, the logic is 0. And that is driving the active on-off switch of my serial data. So when it's 1, it's on. When it's 0, it's off. And then in the Arduino code, it's set so if TouchDesigner stops sending serial data for more than a second, Arduino is triggered to shut the eyes. So yeah, that's how all that's working. So that is how I built a set of animatronic eyes that are following me as I walk around the room. That was the basic of how to build all of that. I'm going to add all of my code in the video description because I know I glossed over most of that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how I got these guys to work. Pretty fun project. A little bit more technical than I was expecting, but I feel like I always get myself a little bit in over my head. More than I'm expecting to. So, yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed the video.